I was wondering if you could please talk about what it was like for you prior to becoming enlightened. Did you start feeling different or notice any major differences right before? Did it happen all at once? I'm just curious what the path looks like. Thanks again for everything. Hi Megan. So, okay, this is super complicated to talk about. So my character is not enlightened. So when you're asking me to tell the story of the character's enlightenment, it's kind of a big contradiction because that character didn't become enlightened. This is so hard to talk about. Even though something seemed to happen in the character's story, there was this break in the character's story where something really radical and beautiful happened and it relaxed the character to a certain extent, that character never gets to own it. My character isn't enlightened. Even though it seems like it is because it's talking through this body and then it looks like it is. This is the terrible trap of trying to talk about this subject. So my character, still cries when she sees something sad, and I am not perfect. I can get angry. I can be joyful. I can be overexcited. I can talk too much. I can be selfish. I can be generous. I can feel uncomfortable. I can feel very comfortable. The freedom was something revealing itself that was always there, and this energetic movement from being contracted and bound to that character, to this boundlessness. And that affected the character. That did have an effect on my character. And maybe at first I looked too much into the personal dynamics that had changed. But then over time I realized they could change back or they changed. The personal dynamics are always changing. And maybe at first I focused on that a bit too much, the personal dynamics, like I felt some personal dynamic shift, but then I began to realize they change and whatever I said could be contradicted. And on the personal level, the personal level is still personal, but the revealing of this it's so obvious now. That's how I can talk about it so clearly and do hours and hours of talks, because there is a home no matter what my character's going through, even if it's sobbing because of a relative being ill or because your boyfriend says something mean to you or whatever. There is also this freedom. There's a knowing of something beyond me. But this is so hard to talk about. What happened in my story was I went through this massive spiritual journey, and through all this spiritual journey I did loads of different things, and I questioned my personality, and I lived with my ex-boyfriend that's a spiritual teacher and did all these different things. And I listened to non-duality. I listened and I listened and I listened. And then a shock happened. I lost a lot of things all in one go. And suddenly I didn't have the possibility to imagine my future. I couldn't make up what my past had been. Like I couldn't really work out what happened. It was all happened so quickly. And prior to that, I had been having these awakenings, but I didn't really know that I was having these awakenings. It's like I would just suddenly have this experience where I was so involved in what was happening. There was such an intimacy in what was happening, and it was empty. Like there was this emptiness as well. And I was having these experiences on and off, but because they were on and off, my mind couldn't really grab onto it. And so I, for some reason, didn't really think about it that much. I just didn't know what to put that down to. And then when this thing happened, this like expansion happened, like a moving back to something, or a moving into something of what I already was. So it feels like you're something contracted inside the body, but actually you're this empty looking in the I am, and neither of those are limited. We walk around as if we're limited, but we're ultimately not limited. So there can be this remembering of that, which can feel like an expansion back in to who you are. And that freedom isn't a mental thing. I used to think that freedom was a mental thing, and it's not a personal thing. Like I still have the imprint of all, there's still the imprint of Lisa. There's still Lisa in which life is being experienced through, and she comes with all her qualities and all her dynamics. It's really not on the human level about being a superhuman. I sometimes feel that the unfortunate thing about a lot of gurus that express this is they have a personality type that is a perfectionist and likes to project to others this perfect being, that they're this enlightened, perfect being. And I feel like it distorts the true message. And that's just a personality type. Their parents maybe always projected that. They were grown up like that they are the ruler and they are perfect. Or they have that projection out to people, and they tend to be the people that push themselves forwards. They tend to be the people that speak about it. But it changes now because of the internet. And so because of the internet, people like me begin to express this message that isn't trying to project perfection, that's quite open to talking about things that maybe to some people don't seem perfect, or to exposing herself. And there's other speakers that are doing that. But if it hadn't been for the internet, I doubt I'd ever started speaking, because I'm a talker and I love speaking, but I'm a bit of an introvert, so I'm not that sort of person that would go and set up a big organization and be like, hello. I like doing retreats, but I'm even considering giving up all public talks that aren't through the internet. But I like doing retreats because they tend to be small and intimate. So, but in the past, you know, if you look at the figures that we have in our imagination that have expressed this, like the Buddha, and they're like portrayed as some sort of gods. Jesus. We've got characters like Muji on the scene, like all these different guru types that portraying some godlike figure, and it's not bad, that's just what's happening, but it gives the impression to the seeker that they've got to become some superhuman to be enlightened. But you're already enlightened. Like the Buddhism, they say, the Buddha nature, it's the remembering of that, it's the movement back to that. You can forever improve the human, forever. Even the Buddha could have improved himself on the human level. But because of the personality type, they'll have said that they couldn't. That, I mean, ultimately they are perfect, but I mean, like you can endlessly grow the dynamics to be more compassionate, more generous, or whatever it is, or to release traumas, and then you'll get new traumas. in the flow of things, anything that exists as a thing can always evolve. Anything. And it's always heading that way to evolve and to change and to grow. And once it's got to its maximum growth, in a lot of things, they tend to die and they pass on that information to the next generation, to the next generation. And particular experiences did happen for me prior to the awakening, but that's this particular body-mind story. Doesn't mean it'll be your story.